The diner went silent the moment the old man spoke. "I served with Delta," he said quietly, his voice trembling just slightly as if those words still carried weight after all these years. A group of young veterans sitting at the next table burst into laughter. "Delta Force, sure, old man," one of them mocked. "Next you'll tell us you trained Rambo." The old man didn't respond. He just looked down at his chipped coffee mug, the steam curling up toward the faded patches on his worn jacket. The name tag read, H. Cole, the letters almost invisible from age. No one in that diner knew who he really was. Not yet. Henry Cole was 72 years old, living quietly on the outskirts of a small town in Texas. He came to the diner every morning at 7 sharp, sat at the corner booth, ordered black coffee and eggs, and left without a word. The locals called him Colonel, though no one was sure if he'd actually been one. He walked with a slight limp, a souvenir from somewhere far away and long ago. Most of the new generation of veterans hung out there too, guys just back from Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria. They respected service, sure, but to them, Henry was just an old-timer spinning tales from movies. When he once mentioned Delta Force, the secretive elite unit that most people only knew from books and films, they laughed him right out of the diner. "Come on, old man, you expect us to believe that?" One young vet named Jason sneered. "Delta doesn't brag, and they sure don't hang out in small-town diners." The manager, tired of the argument, walked over and said, "Maybe it's best you eat somewhere else, sir." That broke him a little. Henry picked up his hat, nodded without a word, and walked out into the cold morning wind. Henry lived in a small wooden house just outside town. The walls were lined with photos, most of them faded, some with faces blurred for security reasons. In one, a younger Henry stood beside men in camouflage, their faces hidden under black bars. On his mantel sat a folded flag and a single tarnished medal. He ran his finger over the edges of the medal every night. He wasn't angry at the young men for doubting him. How could they know? The missions he'd been part of were still classified. Names erased, records sealed. Even his own service record said, undisclosed operations. But sometimes, the ghosts came back. He'd wake up drenched in sweat, hearing the echoes of explosions, the cries of his brothers, and the radio static calling out, "Eagle 1, extraction in 30. No one believed him, no one remembered. A week later, the diner was busy again when a convoy of black SUVs rolled into town. The doors opened, and out stepped several men in dark suits, earpieces in their ears. The entire diner turned to stare. The men scanned the room until one of them spoke into a mic, confirming location. Proceeding to pick up, moments later, they walked straight out of town and headed toward the dusty road leading to Henry Cole's house. Inside the diner, Jason and the other veterans joked nervously. "Who do you think they're looking for? Mayor?" But their laughter stopped when military helicopters appeared overhead. Blackhawks. Real ones. The rumble of the rotors shook the windows. Dust flew across the road as the convoy stopped in front of Henry's old house. Within minutes, uniformed men, not just soldiers, but operators, stepped out. No names, no insignia. Just a single patch, Delta. The young veterans from the diner followed, curious. They stayed behind the fence line as they saw what unfolded next. One of the Delta operators, tall, muscular, wearing a beard, saluted Henry as he stepped onto the porch. "Sir," the man said respectfully, his voice steady but emotional. "Command sent us to bring you in." Henry looked confused. "Me? I've been retired for 30 years. "Yes, sir," the operator said. "But the unit doesn't forget its own. We lost our team leader last week. Before he passed, he asked for one man to guide us through this next operation. You trained him, sir. You trained all of us." Henry's eyes welled up. For the first time in decades, someone remembered. The operator handed him a small, sealed envelope marked classified. Henry opened it and stared at the mission details. The handwriting inside was familiar, his old commander's. "You're needed again, Colonel Cole." By now, the entire town had gathered. The same veterans who mocked him stood speechless as Henry, the man they'd thrown out of the diner, walked out wearing his old combat jacket. One of the younger men whispered, he wasn't lying." The Delta team formed up around him, saluting as he passed. The lead operator opened the SUV door and said, "Welcome back, sir." The sight of that, of a forgotten old man being treated like a living legend, froze everyone where they stood. The diner manager who'd kicked him out lowered his head. My God, he really was Delta Force. Henry didn't go for glory or revenge. He went because his men needed him. The operation that followed remained off the books. Some said it was a hostage rescue overseas. Others claimed it was a covert intelligence extraction gone wrong. But weeks later, a story broke on the news: Delta Force successfully completes impossible mission with no casualties. No names were released, of course. But those who knew saw the faint outline of an older man stepping off a helicopter in the background. When Henry returned home, he didn't talk about it. He simply went back to the diner one morning like nothing had happened. This time, everyone stood up when he walked in. Jason, the young vet who'd mocked him, was the first to speak. "Sir," he said softly, "coffee's on me." Henry smiled, took his seat at the corner booth, and nodded. "Appreciate it, son. But remember, never doubt the quiet ones." Months later, the diner added something new: a framed photo of Henry in his younger days, beside his old unit. A brass plaque beneath it read, "In honor of Colonel Henry Cole, Delta Force. A true soldier never retires." Henry passed away quietly a year later. The entire town attended his funeral, along with men in dark suits who stood at a distance, men who carried themselves with the same silent strength Henry once had. As the bugle played and the flag was folded, Jason whispered, "He never bragged, he just remembered." And above the cemetery, a single black helicopter flew by, a final salute from the brotherhood that never forgot their own. Respect the quiet warriors. They don't need to prove who they are. Their legacy speaks when it matters most.